Welcome to episode number 60 of the Road to Cinema podcast, featuring actor, writer, and director Keith Powell. You may know him from the hit show 30 Rock, starring Tina Fey, Alec Baldwin, and Tracy Morgan, but now he has a new web series called Keith Broke His Leg, which is now available on getbroken.com and Vimeo. Keith and I discuss his venture into this brand new comedy web series, which also features guest appearances by actors such as Aubrey Plaza. We'll delve into Keith's craft of acting, his roots in the theater community, and his perspective on diversity in media. For more information on the Road to Cinema podcast, to read the Road to Cinema blog, and to watch our Road to Cinema YouTube series, please visit jogroadproductions.com. And don't forget, you still have a chance to win a free download of the Final Draft screenwriting software by doing all of the above. Follow us on Twitter at JogRoad, follow us on Instagram at JogRoad Productions, like our Facebook page, JogRoad Productions, subscribe to our JogRoad Productions YouTube channel, and write us a nice review on the iTunes podcast page under the Road to Cinema podcast. Do all of the above and you'll have a chance to win a free download of the Final Draft screenwriting software, brought to you by Road to Cinema and our friends at Final Draft. And now we join actor, writer, and director Keith Powell as he shares his insights into creating his new comedy web series, Keith Broke His Leg, which is now available on getbroken.com and Vimeo.
You know, for me, first of all, I've always been a writer. I've always been a director. I actually got my degree in directing at NYU. So I've always been a person who wanted to create content and wanted to kind of create my own projects. With this, it was out of a need for me to kind of share my life and share the details of my life in a new and interesting way. I feel like that a lot of people had a preconceived notion about me, and I wanted to kind of tell stories about the whole of me rather than just one aspect that people knew about me. So the show is kind of like my way of telling stories about the kind of the growth that I have had as a person and as an artist in the past 2 or 3 years.
And were you building it around what you knew you had, knowing that you were going to shoot in your house, knowing that you were going to do that? Did you create the concept sort of around what resources you had available?
Yeah. I mean, because the premise was so autobiographical, it just made everything easier. And I never really confined myself to the house. It's just most of my life happens in my house. And I knew that I was going to shoot here. There was a pact that I had to sign with my wife where she told me that there was only a maximum amount of 3 crew members that are allowed in the house, so that a whole bunch of people wouldn't overrun the house.
So that's what it pretty much was, just 3 people.
Yeah, it was about 3 or 4 people. It was about a crew of 3 or 4 people, so that everything didn't feel, kind of like an overrun. So actually shooting in my house was at sometimes a disadvantage just because we had such a small crew.
So it was just the sound person, your DP, and...
Yeah, there was a sound person, there was a DP, there was an assistant camera. The DP was the cameraman as well, but there was an assistant camera guy, and then there was a PA sometimes. Sometimes there'd be a PA, sometimes there'd be an assistant camera guy. So we had like a swing.
And how much prep did you do before shooting? Were you detailed about shot lists and storyboarding?
For the first 6 episodes, we just shot 6 more episodes, and I wasn't as detailed, because we kind of knew what the show was, and we kind of knew how we wanted to kind of shoot the show and the style of it, so it became a little easier. But yeah, I did a lot of preparing for the first 6 just because we didn't know what beast we had.
Yeah, and I was curious too, acting and directing at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, I always wonder, how is that possible? Like, how do you sort of take yourself out of it to either give notes and
Right.
realize sort of how you're fitting into the whole piece?
Well, it's incredibly difficult. I'm not gonna lie that it was a balancing act. Really, like the entire thing, and this is something that I very much learned from Tina Fey on 30 Rock, because I had asked her how is it that she juggles all these hats and seems to stay so calm and sane in the middle of it all. And she said to me once that I just look down at my feet and put one foot in front of the other, and I don't lift my head up until I reach the destination. And that's kind of really what the process was like for me as a director and an actor. Very often it would be, all right, I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to be an actor fully, and then I do what I need to do as an actor fully, and then I step out of it and go, I'm a director, and I need to be the director fully, and I step out of that, and just kind of like changing hats in that way, and being completely present in the moment when you're doing the work, the specific work that you need to do for that, whatever that moment calls for.
Is it ever hard if you have a note for the other actor, you sort of see that they're going in the wrong direction and you're sort of in the scene?
It's really, really hard. I mean, on a bigger crew, because I've directed myself before in things, but I've never had a crew this small. And on a bigger crew, I normally just give all of my notes and what I want to achieve for the scene to the first AD. And then the first AD talks to the other actors about what he's looking for or what I'm looking for. And so it doesn't take the actor out of it when I, like if I'm an actor in the scene with you, for me giving a note.
Yeah.
But in this, we didn't have the luxury of a first AD or a middleman to do that. So it was one of those things where, we would read through the scene and I would talk about what I'd like to achieve for the scene. Honestly, I think that it just meant a longer rehearsal period before each scene. And then when we were shooting it, I would direct in camera. Like I would, throw out notes as the camera was rolling. And then I would direct myself in camera, which is like one day I'll reveal how I do that in a weird, and I look kind of schizophrenic, but I would say, all right, just roll the camera, and I do a line, and I go, okay, I'm going to try it a different way, so I do the same with myself as well.
Do you play it back and watch yourself?
I do
after each take.
Not after each take, because we just don't have the time for that.
Yeah.
But I do watch the dailies every day, and we do have. I always give myself every shooting period a day for reshoots, so that if there's something that we just didn't get right, we can always go back and reshoot it.
And did you also have like sort of separate days that you wanted to do for rehearsal or sort of to block out scenes to make it go faster?
We normally rehearse on the day for this show. I have done. It just depends on the project and what the project requires. But on this show, I really wanted to get a sense of freedom to it and lived in quality, something that felt organic, and not so staged and stagey and like joke.
Yeah.
So we often would just rehearse on the day, in the moment, right before we start filming, and then kind of let the cameras roll and see what happens, even if what we achieved in rehearsal wasn't exactly what we were going for. We just kind of found it in while the cameras were rolling. The show is 100% scripted, so it was it's about learning the lines, but it's about kind of figuring out how the lines work in the mouths of the actors.
In the opening of Chocolate with Aubrey Plaza, she's there, and there's sort of a looseness to it where I don't know if some of that was improvised or some was scripted. It feels like their personalities are coming out a lot.
Yeah.
In that sense, so.
Well, you have to talk. You have to understand that is a group of people that I've known for, I want to say, the better part of 15 years, probably longer than that. So we're all really naturally, we feel natural with each other anyway.
Yeah.
And Aubrey and Seth, they're pros, and they quite understand my writing style and my rhythm. Both of them were in plays that I wrote when I was like 18 years old, and they were like 12. So, so they already understand the style of the piece. The first, the first bit of chocolate of that episode is probably improvised, but once we get into the conversations about eating the weed, cookies and stuff, it is very much it is very much scripted, and it's just because I know those people and I know what voice I should write in, and they know kind of how to play it, and they're brilliant actors themselves. We just kind of found it on the day. I really just called Aubrey and Seth and said, "Why don't you come over and pretend or not pretend to smoke pot and have some food, and something will happen."
Yeah.
That's how it kind of.
I was curious in initially writing the episodes, how personal did you want to make it?
Incredibly personal. Pretty much the show is pretty much 90% true. None of the stories happen in the exact way that they happen. It's as if all the events in my life kind of go into a blender.
Yeah.
But it's pretty true to life, and it's pretty accurate. It's just the events don't happen in that way.
Is there anything in the show that you feel is sort of like the most personal to you in a sense?
Well, I mean, like being caught masturbating. It's pretty personal. No, I mean
that really did happen.
Yeah, no, I mean we had our house was being renovated, and the worker there was a worker around who kept knocking on the door asking like for my opinion about something going on that I didn't care about. So that really did happen. But I don't know, is there something like really incredibly personal about it? There's an episode that's coming up that reveals a real conversation that happened between my wife and I that's very personal and that's very emotional, and both me and my wife perform it, so that it was a beautiful recreation of that conversation, which is incredibly personal to me. But all of these things, I want to stress. I don't want the show to be viewed as some sort of ego trip or some sort of vanity project. For me, it's about telling a story and about telling a particular truth for that episode. That's what the entire show is about for me. I think that we're in a culture that lacks empathy, and my goal with the show is to create empathy for people to think deeper about their lives, and thereby thinking deeper about other people and the way that they relate to other people. And the way that the show, I feel like, is structured is that the character of Keith reveals a truth about himself that he didn't know before in each episode. And once we build those little truths, we get an idea of a full man, and hopefully an audience can empathize with him. Yeah. So that's kind of how I want the show to function. So all the personal stories are really just at when I've revealed a personal thing about myself that made me think about my life in a different way.
Yeah. Just going back to
now, the street cleaning is coming from the other side. Now they're coming back the other side.
Rounds too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just curious, sort of going back to when you knew you wanted to be an actor when you were back at NYU. Were you mainly thinking, I want a career in theater, or I want a career in film? What were sort of kind of your initial goals going in?
I think that every drama student wants a career in theater first, because that's the most accessible thing to them. My passion had always been in television and film, just from the very beginning. I never thought that I was going to have a career in television and film.
Why was that?
It seemed like a fairy tale to me. I wanted it too much, you know. But and theater was a much more accessible vehicle for me because that's all drama students work in theater at first, and so it seemed much more accessible. But if I'm being honest with myself, I've always wanted to be an actor in TV and film. I always wanted the medium of film to work in. I love theater and I love doing theater. I ran a theater company for several years. But my real passion is television and film.
What type of projects were you doing in your theater company? Were just original plays?
Oh yeah, when I was 23, I started a theater company in Wilmington, Delaware, that had Lynn Redgrave as the very first person to star in a production. It was a revival of a play called Collected Stories by oh my goodness, Donald Margulies.
Did he write End of the Tour recently? Donald Margulies?
He did write a play that was recently on Broadway. He won a Pulitzer
the movie too, I think.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I think I interviewed him. Actually.
I'm sure the man is a fucking genius.
Yeah.
He won a Pulitzer for a play called Dinner with Friends, and he and I were in contact a lot while I did Collected Stories. He's a wonderfully kind man and very smart, and a brilliant writer. So you might have interviewed him. I know that he's always has a.
Yeah, it was the David Foster Wallace, Jason Segel movie, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so he adapted the article.
Oh, did he?
That it was based on, I think. So.
I love that guy. I think he's now a professor at Yale or something.
Yeah, that's
like
where
that.
I spoke to him through.
Oh, is that right?
So,
yeah. yeah. I
he's
love
a nice guy.
Oh, such a good guy. Such a good guy. And he was very passionate about my production of Collected Stories. And I was 23. I didn't know what I was doing. But Lynn came down and did it, and that was kind of like my masterclass, watching her work. I mean, watching a Redgrave in a rehearsal room, it changed my life. It informed my career as an actor.
And what type of projects were you thinking about doing from that point on? Were you thinking about sort of self-starting plays?
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to bring diversity to the theater, because I don't think that I think the theater lacks diversity, and that was kind of the stories that I wanted to tell, and the way that I wanted to kind of tell them. I still think that the theater, even more than television and film, tremendously lacks diversity. It's much more homogenized, mainstream theater, and it frightens me and upsets me and angers me, and it's something that I want to see changed
from Broadway and beyond.
I'm talking about Broadway and off Broadway, New York theater, really. New York theater, really, which is what is considered like mainstream theater today. I'd like to get mainstream theater out of New York. But honestly, that's a fight. That's a fight that I determined was someone else's fight. My passion was always in television and film, and there are so many diversity issues in television and film that's the fight that I chose to fight.
Yeah. So for you, what have you seen as far as diversity issues in TV and film when you entered into it, and did you think it was sort of even, as you said, maybe even worse than theater? In a sense,
no, I actually think the theater is a little worse, and the reason why is because in television and film, the diversity problems that we have is that people want to do diversity because they realize that it's good business, but they want to pigeonhole people and confine diversity into something that's palatable for them. And what I mean by that is the majority wants to constrict the minority into something that the majority is easy to digest, and that doesn't represent fully what the minority is, and it doesn't give the minority a chance to represent themselves. So I feel like that there's a pigeonholing in television and film that happens. In theater, I don't think that conversation's even happening.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like original plays that are coming on Broadway, I mean, it's all sort of like white cat. I mean, you don't see like a lot of projects from different.
I think that there's a lack of women.
Yeah.
A lack of female storytellers. I think that there's a lack of white of other than non-white storytellers. I think that the theater really gets the diversity and vastness of the homosexual community in a way that I very much applaud, and think that they're doing a better job at fighting that than television and film is doing. But I don't think that. I think that that's as much of diversity as that they're going to.
Because the ticket prices, I mean, it's
that's the thing.
Dollars, so
that's the thing. The theater is kind of cannibalizing itself in a way, because the ticket prices are so high that they're now only being the costs to produce a play are so much, and the ticket prices are so high, and the seats are so few, that you then have to create plays that a person who will pay that amount will want to go and see. And a person who plays that amount is often upper class, white, theater going, arts minded audiences, and so you start cannibalizing yourself, because you're kind of chasing your own tail. You're kind of going around in a circle about who you need to appeal to and what you want to hold back from.
Yeah.
It frustrates me, but I get the very real problem that they have. And I don't know the way out of it.
The government subsidizing theater would be the best. In Europe, it's all kind of the standard, even for film.
I would love that. I would really love that, but I feel like we're battling fights now over if Muslims should be let into the country, and I think that subsidizing theater to improve our lives is a conversation that no one wants to have.
Yeah. I think it's unfortunate. I mean, I was in Europe recently. I mean, so much is, the film. I mean, we had the French Cinematheque I went to, and it was all subsidized by the government.
But that's the thing, because we live in a culture that lacks empathy. I think that we live in a culture that lacks empathy specifically because we don't have theater or film or TV there to challenge us and make us think more about our lives. We have theater and television and film there to placate us and to just tell us what we already know, and almost kind of condescend to us. And now news is also doing that. We now live in a culture where the news cycle is also not just there to placate us. And I want to bring, not so much challenging, I want to bring thoughtfulness back to entertainment, because you can be entertaining and thoughtful at the same time. And people go to that, and people need that for their lives, thereby creating a society of empathy. But that's just not the rhythm or the infrastructures that we've put in place at the moment.
Yeah. No, I think, people should know, you can create content that makes you think and question things without it being didactic or lecturing.
Exactly.
It's not...
because there is entertainment that's didactic, and those are also just really placating their audience, because they're just preaching to a choir. They're telling people what they already want to hear.
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, it's boring.
Yeah. And you see that a lot with the sort of Oscar contender movies. Yeah. They're all sort of geared to one issue or another, and they're just sort of preaching to the same.
They're just telling people what they want to hear.
Yeah.
I do think that there are movies that are challenging that do end up in the Oscar race sometimes. And frankly, there are movies that I just want to go to the movie and have fun. So I'm not discounting that. I just think that we are overrun with, I just want to go to a movie and have fun. I want to go to a movie and have my life changed, or me think about my life in a different way, or help me to become a better person, you know? And I don't think we have a lot of that.
Yeah. No, have you seen Dope?
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, how that's left out of the sort of Oscar race this year is really surprising.
Frankly, Dope, I had a different expectation going into Dope when I saw it. I really liked it because I liked how they put it together.
Yeah.
But I feel like that there was actually a lot of opportunities that they missed.
What do you think those were in a way?
Okay, so I saw it the first week it came out, so it's been a while.
When did it come out? Early, May or?
I think it was a summer movie, right?
Yeah.
So it's been a while, but if I remember correctly, I think that the movie kind of had too much of a pat ending. It gave too much to its hero without the hero really fighting for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sort of wrapped up the whole thing of him
tried to
selling
wrap
drugs,
everything
and
up.
like that was it. He was going to go to college. He was going to get out of the situation easier than he could have in a way.
And I felt like that they were missing some major opportunities to make it more entertaining and to make it more thoughtful, in my way, in some way. But again, I don't want to discount.
I think the questions that it was asking were really interesting.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't want to discount the movie because I do think that it was an interesting and worthy film that people should see. But, you know, I felt pandered to sometimes when I was watching the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that. I mean, it's just sort of it asks certain questions, but then it can wrap it up a little too conveniently.
I feel like it asked certain questions and then answered them. And I went, well, I don't agree with that answer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that I think that if it had asked if it left the questions for me to answer, then I would have been more entertained by it.
Yeah, but I think we should be striving for content like that really is showing people that there's this other experience, and this is what people have to deal with on a normal basis.
Absolutely, and I really applaud that diversity in that way. And I this all sounds like I'm on this diatribe there, like every movie you have to think deeply about your life, and that's not true. There are projects that I work in comedy. I want to fucking laugh. You know what I mean? And I want to just go and enjoy myself.
I feel like 30 Rock did that a lot. It was entertaining, but yet it was still sort of.
But it was talking about what was happening right now, and it was
right,
and that's kind of the thing that I strive for, and that I'm actually really happy to have been a part of 30 Rock for, because it was social commentary wrapped in a ridiculous, zany, package.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you sort of a question more related to acting in a sense, just sort of being on a set.
Mm-hmm.
What is kind of your ideal dream director in terms of, like, do you like somebody who's sort of giving you lots of notes, somebody who's sort of at a distance, letting you kind of play around with things? If you had sort of a dream director that you could create.
A wonderful question. I would love a director that gave me space, because ultimately you hired me to do a job, to let me do my job. But I also want that director to help push me in the right way if I'm going astray, because just the nature of artists is that they can go in many different directions, and they need a filter, and they need somebody to push them and guide them in the right direction. So for me, I guess I want a director who can kind of walk the line, who gives me enough notes to make me feel like I can give the performance that I know I'm capable of.
Yeah. So it's sort of like trusting in the casting and then giving modifications throughout in a way.
Yeah.
And what for you would be kind of like the worst director scenario in a sense?
A micromanager.
Yeah.
Micromanagers drive me crazy. But on that same token, I've also worked with people who've given me nothing. And I felt like I was drowning or flying blind, and I didn't...
By nothing, do you mean just like
Like
they
not
say
telling me
action,
anything.
that's it, you go, you
Yeah.
restart?
So that's why it's about finding that balance. I guess I always just want to feel taken care of. That no matter what I do, they won't let people see me look foolish. And I think that that's what every actor strives for. I don't want to look like an idiot.
Yeah.
And
Do you ever wish you could like be in the editing room in a way and like pick the takes and
No.
Is that ever?
No.
So when you like
No.
do the scene, you're not like, oh, I like take one better than take three
No.
or anything like that.
I'm too vulnerable. I don't know what I can't trust myself in that situation. I'm too vulnerable. I would love to do a performance that you're proud of, that I'm proud of, that works for the scene, that achieves what you want, and I want to turn to you and go, did you get everything you needed? And a director going, yes, and we can move on. My brain doesn't work that literally. If I'm directing myself, probably, but if I'm directing myself, I'm going to see all the takes anyway, so I'll make a decision then.
Yeah.
But if I'm just acting in a project, I just want to trust. I want the director to trust me, and I want to trust the director. And in a way, it's the director is the one is the primary storyteller. I'm a tool. I'm a vehicle to help tell the story. So I just want you to use me in the way that helps you tell your story. And I want to walk away from it and go, I hope I gave you everything that you needed.
Have you ever had situations where maybe you have like an initial meeting with a director and they sort of talk a good game in a sense, and then you get to the set and it's a completely different...
Yeah.
Is that kind of... I mean, do you try to have a conversation with them and sort of see how you
No, I mean,
adjust, or...
no, I mean, I in every situation, my default is to trust the director. And if I'm doing something wrong, or if I'm doing something that doesn't help your vision, then I want you to tell me about it. I don't want to just not be told anything. I mean, I want to help tell the story. And so if you decided to change your mind and this is the way the story should be told now versus what I told you about before, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to trust you and just go in that direction. I'm never going to do anything that is inauthentic to me, that portrays me or my race in a bad way. So as long as we understand that,
Yeah.
I trust the director to tell the story that he wants to tell, even if he changes his mind in the middle of it.
Is there any sense for you a difference between directors you've encountered in the theater versus in film? Is there any sense that maybe film directors are more technical in a way?
Yeah, I mean,
or...
film directors are a little bit more technical, but I've met very technical theater directors. So in a general sense, yeah. But, there's variations in each genre. I don't see a difference. I think that, I got my degree in directing. And the thing that I hammered, that was always hammered home for me when I was going through the program, was the director's number one job is to tell a story. And if you're telling a story, and you're doing everything at your disposal to make sure that the story is being told, then it doesn't matter if you're overly technical or underly technical or don't know anything about a fucking camera. As long as you're doing the things that help to tell the story,
Yeah.
you can do television, film, or theater.
Yeah, and you're just communicating with the crew, communicating with
You
the
have to be
actors.
able to
I mean,
communicate how to tell the story in the way that you want to tell it. So that's an important tool. But, Alfred Hitchcock was a terrible communicator with his actors. but he was also an amazing director.
Yeah, and he basically pre-shot the whole movie in his head in a way.
Yeah.
He edited the whole thing.
He edited within camera,
Yeah.
which was fascinating. But he often emotionally tortured his actors, and so he wasn't the greatest communicator in that way. But maybe that was the way he felt like he needed to tell the story. As long as I don't want to be emotionally abused, but
have you had directors whose way of communicating was yelling, or just maybe they didn't know how to handle stress, so they just started screaming at everybody, the crew, the actors?
I've had that. I've had those, and at those times I shut down because that's not.
Do you try
a
to
way
ever
to communicate
talk back,
to me.
or do you just kind of like, I'm gonna take a
I
step
don't know.
back and let them have their moment in a way?
It depends on the situation. I'm just there to tell the story.
Yeah.
And so if I'm a pretty stoic guy on sets. Like I try to just come in and do my job and go home. On 30 Rock, I was on that set for 7 years, so I started, being a little bit more personable and treating it more as a family and than that. But for the most part, I just try to do my job. And if somebody doesn't appreciate that job, or is screaming and yelling, or communicating in a way that does not speak to me, then I normally shut down, and I normally just go, I will just give me a line reading so I can go home.
What's fascinating is just from working on a lot of sets, it's like you would think that the set is treated like an office environment.
Yeah,
but no one tends to do that. You would think that it's like a workplace. But
yeah, I feel like too many. Well, I don't know. Sets are like it. In a way, it is an art form. Actors are there and they're vulnerable. Directors are there and they're supposed to have all the answers, and they don't, and they can't. It's just not humanly possible, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about a lot of fragility on a set, and you can't then use it as a workplace because it's not just business as usual. You're talking about things that are completely subjective in an environment that is all about ego. And I'm not saying ego in a bad way. I'm saying ego like just making sure that you want to show up on set and do a good job. You want people to like you
because it's going to be out there forever.
Right. Yeah,
whatever you're doing,
you're exposed in a way, and so you can't just treat it as put in these numbers, be polite, go get coffee on your coffee break. There is an emotional aspect to it. At the end of the day, also you have to make your shots.
So maybe sometimes that conflict can breed more creativity in a way.
Correct.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you have to get all your shots in, and so there is a sense of there's a clock, and you're costing the corporations money when you're just sitting around feeling. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there is a sense that that you have to that your job you have to do your job, and that you have to make your day, right? And for people who don't know what making your day is, it's every day you have a certain number of scenes that you have to shoot, and making your day is just completing all the things that you needed to complete that day, and it's such a major thing especially in television, making your day. Because you don't get a scene done, you've pushed back an entire production and you've wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's a big problem not making your day.
Yeah. I suppose you have more pages to shoot than on a feature film, and there's just so much more that's kind of...
generally you have more pages to shoot on a feature film. It depends on the project sometimes, but mostly. I did a big studio movie, Night at the Museum, and I think we shot 3.5 pages a day, and 30 Rock averaged about 7 or 8 pages a day.
Wow, 3.5 pages. That's
It
must have been like a 60-day shoot or something.
It was luxurious. I was there for a month, and my my final screen time like probably added up to like 4 or 5 minutes. You know, but you know, I mean, like, I don't know. It depends on the project, I think, but generally, movies spend more time on pages than TV shows.
Yeah. This related to Keith broke his leg. When you knew that you wanted to step out and make this, were you thinking about marketing and releasing it and how you would do that? And I was also wondering, is there a reason why you didn't choose YouTube as opposed to Vimeo?
There is a reason. I gave a lot of thought. I sat on the project for a while before releasing it.
Oh, you mean it was finished for?
Yeah, it was finished for about 2 or 3 months, and we originally had a release date, and then we pushed that release date back because we were trying to figure out how to get it out to the public in a way that people would respond to. And we're still kind of figuring it out. I mean, we're fucking around and who knows, like, you know, I mean, we're still trying to find an audience, so it's never going to be a perfect launch, right? But yeah, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about strategy and releasing it. And in those conversations, a lot of people advocated for me to put it on YouTube. I find YouTube to be kind of like the Wild West. I find YouTube, not to knock that, but I find YouTube to be like broadcast, like ABC, NBC, CBS,
Yeah.
and I find Vimeo to be like cable. It's a smaller audience, but it's a much more passionate audience. It's much more focused on filmmaking rather than focused on branding. And I thought, you know, Keith Broke His Leg is a slow show. The pace of the show is not louder, faster, funnier. The pace of the show is pretty measured, and I felt like the Vimeo audience would understand that more.
Yeah. And is there a monetization system on Vimeo now, or is it?
There is,
Same,
but I'm not doing that.
Ah.
I'm making it completely free. But there is on Vimeo. There's a paywall. I think you can put up, but I don't want to do that.
So is your
yet.
goal to turn this into sort of like a half-hour comedy, or to?
I don't know. At the moment, I want to tell these stories. I think that it's important for this show to be out there because I think that the primary, you know, mission statement of the show is to reveal truth within yourself and within other people. And I think that that's an important mission statement that needs to go out to the world. But I don't know. You know, there has been a production company has expressed interest in helping to develop it so that we can pitch it to networks. I'm gonna explore that road, but I don't know if it's ultimately what's going to serve the project. I've just started having those conversations.
And are you planning to shoot more episodes? Like you were saying, you're going to release more coming up.
Yeah. I'm releasing. You know, the current plans are that at least 6 more episodes are going to be released. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to probably just do another season the exact way, and I've done it now.
Same crew size, same practice. Yeah.
And try to knock out 12 more episodes. So the first season will be 12 episodes. We've released 8 so far, so I'll release 4 more. And then Series Fest, which is a web festival, has asked me to do a 22-minute episode. So after the 12 that I release, I will then I'm in the process now of writing a 22-minute episode.
Awesome.
And then after that, I might.
Is that like a film festival type of?
Yeah, I mean, the festival it's a brand new festival. It's out in Colorado. I love them. I participated in it last year, and it was one of the best festival experiences I ever had. It's just because they care so much about the projects that come into the festival. and so they asked me to do this thing for next year, and it's all independent pilots that get put in front of networks for developing opportunities and things like that.
Oh, that's awesome. I really didn't know that kind of so there is like a world out there.
There is a world of
make
that.
Your own content and you try to pitch it, and it's not just a sizzle reel, it's like full episodes that you can get out there.
New York Television Festival is the biggest, I think, festival for that. I also participated in that festival once. I really loved them, and I really loved being a part of that festival. And, Sirius Fest is another one. I know that there's a couple more independent. There's an independent television festival in Vermont. That's a big festival.
I heard about that one. That's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah.
I was curious, lastly, how important do you think it is for actors, writers, directors to be self-starters and getting projects going as opposed to sort of waiting for something to come to them?
I think it's of the utmost importance, and especially in this current environment for artists, because so much of art has now become democratized, that it's been put into the hands of, anybody can make anything look beautiful and be beautiful, that it's now about the limitations of your creativity rather than the limitations of the tools with which to make the things that you want to make. And so I think that young artists definitely today need to start thinking about creating for themselves. Or at the very least, honing and understanding what makes you unique and interesting, and putting that out into the world. Yeah.
Do you think it's any different for actors than writers and directors, in a sense? Do you think it's even more important for them to...
I think it's all important, equally important. I don't think that the answer is always, for an actor, the answer is always to write something for themselves. That is an answer for a lot of actors that I think that is important, but I don't think that is the go-to answer. I think that actors can be creative in terms of how they can put their work out into the world, especially if they don't consider themselves writers. So I don't know. I mean, actors can write and direct, and if that's what they want to do, then great. And directors can act, whatever it is that puts your uniqueness out into the world. You need to find how to do it, I think. And there's any number of ways for one to achieve that goal. It's just, that's the fight.
Yeah, and I think now it's so easy to get your content out there, but then you have to also master kind of social media and all these.
And that drives me crazy, dude. I mean, frankly, it drives me crazy. I'm terrible at all of that, and that's the fight that I'm having now. Because I've created this show, and I don't know and I'm still figuring out the way to make sure that the most amount of people can see it.
And is that through just social media, advertising, getting word out there any way you can?
But I put the show out there, and then people started coming to me and saying, I can be of service, I can help you with social media and things like that. And I go, great, because I need help. But I mean, the show still hasn't reached the audiences that I hope for.
Yeah. Is it also sort of like, do you have like management team that kind of helps you navigate that at all? Or?
And when I talk about when I say when putting the show together, it's my manager and I who put the show together. His last name is also Powell, but we're not related, especially if you set us next to each other.
It's ironic.
It's just ironic. So Locke, his name is Locke. Locke and I sit down and have these conversations about what's the best way to put it out into the world, and how do we get people to run stories about it or do the interviews about it. There's another producer on the project named Cynthia who it's her entire job to kind of see how the community at large can engage with the show. So there are those mechanisms in place, but we're like mad scientists. We're just trying to figure it out along with everybody else.
I guess with all these digital companies, they're all experimenting and figuring out how it all works, because now that the internet can come into your TV, it's completely changed the landscape of how people can get internet content.
Exactly, and that's really, and that is that's the fight that we're always trying to is trying to stay ahead of the curve in a way. Or it's not even stay ahead of the curve, ride the curve, right? Because, you can put, you can put a whole bunch of content onto Netflix, but unless Netflix is the thing that everybody's looking at, no one's going to care.
There has to be that awareness out there for anything.
Yeah.
So the best way to see it would be keithbrokehis.leg.com, or am I getting the
you
website
can go to
wrong?
keithbrokehis.leg.com. It'll redirect you to, because I did buy that domain name, but it'll redirect you to getbroken.
Getbroken.com.
Getbroken.com.